Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we will be talking about gastroschisis. What is gastroschisis? What causes babies to be born with this kind of birth defect? Why have I never really heard about it before? How severe is it? Will my baby be okay? What did I do to cause this to happen? These were all questions that I did have whenever I first found out that my daughter was going to be born with gastroschisis. So we'll rewind back to January of 2016. January of 2016 was my very first sonogram. We went in for a sonogram. We're super excited to see that there really was a baby. And we got pictures, of course. This was my very first picture of my baby. And in this picture, you may notice something immediately different. I didn't. I was 19. I had never been pregnant before. Me and my husband were just so ecstatic about there being a baby that I just saw a baby. But the very next day after my sonogram, the clinic called me back and they said that we need to talk to you about your baby, and my heart sunk. They said your baby has a ball or cauliflower looking protrusion from their abdomen. If you have your pictures, go ahead and take a look at them. And I looked at it and I asked him, that's not the umbilical cord. He said, no, those are organs that are protruding out of your baby's stomach. They then explained the different possibilities. They explained that it could be gastroschisis or it could be something else that is similar in nature. It is omphasis. I may be saying that wrong, but it is another birth defect that is very different, but they do have similar appearance on a sonogram. So they explained to me that gastroschisis is more common, they're both still rare, and it is the less severe. So there was a greater chance that it was going to be the gastroschisis. It just so happens that I live in the area of the United States where it is the most common for babies to be born with gastroschisis, yet it is still rare. It did kind of break my heart because I felt like maybe if I had just lived somewhere else, this wouldn't have happened. But it also was very comforting on the bright side because the whole medical staff that I was going to be dealing with was very well prepared for this. They were very up to date on the most current information about gastroschisis, on the most current methods. I was going to have to be induced early. My daughter was going to have to be born at least 3 weeks early, and that she was going to be required to stay in the NICU for at least 5 weeks, maybe even up to 9 or more, or possibly more than one surgery right after her birth. And there were certain things that they explained to me during my pregnancy that I wasn't going to get to do that I really looked forward to, but I knew I was going to miss out on. And that was getting to hold her right afterwards, getting to put her on my chest, and getting to breastfeed her. Those were things that I was not going to be able to do for at least a week. Fast forward to the day I was going to have my daughter. It was July the 12th of 2016. We checked in for the induced labor at 7 a.m. and they proceeded with the process. Well, she wasn't born until the 13th. She took a little while to get here. Although I had complete confidence in the medical staff, it felt like she was being ripped away from me and taken from me. They were going to take her away, so my husband was going to follow, and then they put her in the bag. This is the only time that putting a baby in a plastic bag is acceptable. They put her in a bag up to here. They tied the bag, and then they wrapped her in a blanket, and they handed her to me. And they're like, would you like to hold your baby? And I was like, yes, I want to hold my baby. Can I? Because it really was a shock. We didn't think we were going to be able to do that. But we got to hold her for a few seconds, and then they took her away. So the very next day when I went to go and see her, they had already confirmed that she did have a moderate case of gastroschisis, meaning that she wasn't going to be able to do just the primary repair. They were going to have to do it in stages, which is obviously the more complicated case because it is really hard on the baby and it does require a longer NICU stay. So I went down, I saw her, I saw the silo hanging, and it was hard because whenever she was very drowsy looking, she wasn't alert like you see babies that are born healthy and normal. She was very almost unresponsive, and they explained to me that that was because she was on medication. They did have IVs in all 4 of her limbs for the reason that today was going to be the first day that they push in some intestines. The fact is that her stomach was very small, and pushing any amount of intestines in was going to put a lot of pressure on the inside of her body, and it was going to be uncomfortable. So whenever they came in to do the very first push, they explained to me, they asked me, are you sure you want to stay in here? Are you sure you want to see it? And I told them, no, I can't leave her. I will stay right here. And I watched them push in the first little bit, and it was very difficult to see because the top of her stomach immediately blew up, and she was very uncomfortable. She did kind of cry, but her cry was very weak because she was on so much medication. Although I knew that this is exactly what she needs, if she doesn't get this, she will not survive. It was still hard to watch. They did have to do that day after day for 9 days, which many times it does take 2 weeks. So that was astounding on her part that she was able to endure that. The medical staff knew just exactly how to do it, just the right way. And then brought us to the 10th day. The 10th day was the day that she went in for surgery. And that was another difficult moment because we did have to actually let her out of our sight. So a few hours later, we're waiting in the waiting room. So then the surgeon came out and she explained to us that the surgery went well, that there wasn't any problems with any parts of her intestines, because sometimes little bits of it is damaged along the way, that none of it was damaged. She didn't have to cut a single piece off of any of her intestines, which was another astounding thing. And then we got back to her room. She was intubated for a little while. The hardest part was done. And then we got to the stage where they had to do different feedings, and she would eat a little bit and then they'd have to pump it out because her body wasn't digesting it. Those intestines weren't put in there by the perfect design. They were put in there manually, so the intestines needed time to practice and start working. And so she did go through a regression one time where they had to back off her feedings quite a bit, and that is the big chunk of the NICU stay for most babies that have gastroschisis, is getting their intestines working and being sure that before they go home that their intestines are working right and their bowels are moving right. But then shortly after that, she was able to go home on August the 8th, which was also astounding. She was able to go home within 3 weeks rather than waiting at least 5 or even more. So when they told us that we were going to get to take her home, we were so excited that we could take her home. Yet at the same time, we were like, are you sure? Is this really as fast as we can take her home? We can really take her home at 3 weeks? Okay. And so then we got to go home. And that brings me back to all the questions that I had at the beginning. When I first found out that my baby was going to have gastroschisis, I had never heard of it. And it is becoming more and more common. When I had my daughter in 2016, they were saying 1 in every 10,000 babies. The doctors were saying 1 in every 5,000 babies. The medical articles that I've read recently are saying 1 in every 2,000 or 1 in every 1,300. So with gastroschisis, like most things, there is different levels of severity. With a mild case, it usually means there's minimal amounts of intestines coming out of the baby's stomach, and also that the repair can be done in basically one surgery. Whereas a staged repair does require a more complicated repair and in stages. And that's because there's either most or all of the intestines coming out, maybe even the stomach or the liver. So that gets us to the long-term prognosis. There is not usually any long-term effects for babies that have gastroschisis, but for the more complicated cases, there may be. But those effects are things like irritable bowel syndrome and maybe a sensitivity to some kind of food. They might just be a smaller baby, taking longer to develop. As far as irritable bowel syndrome, she doesn't have that. As far as food allergies or food sensitivities, she doesn't have that. She did just take a little bit longer to start walking, but her communication is right there where it needs to be, if not above. What causes gastroschisis? young mothers are more likely to have children with gastroschisis. Some medical journals that I read said under 30, but most say teen moms. So very young mothers typically are the ones who have babies with gastroschisis more often. Alcohol use and tobacco use also contribute to babies being born with gastroschisis. But that wasn't the case for me. Then they also said that something happens with the genes and the chromosomes that causes that to take place. And then they also said toxins or the environment that you live in can cause babies to be born with gastroschisis. So all that put together basically gives you the answer that they don't have an answer. They don't know what causes gastroschisis. There's nothing that can be done to prevent it from happening. So that's our story, guys. That is our experience with gastroschisis. I hope that this information actually is of use to many people. They do benefit from it, whether you're wanting to learn more about gastroschisis, whether you're just interested in the story that happened with my daughter, or if you are pregnant with a baby that is going to have gastroschisis. I really hope this information benefits you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.